So namaste, welcome to Satsang this evening. So I always try to bring some attention to whatever issue has been coming up for a lot of beings during the week leading up to a satsang. And this week, the question, the issue has been pretty consistent. What can I do to help the situation going on in the world at the moment? It's the most common thing I'm asked. And then what can I do to help myself through this situation that's going on? And my answer is always going to be the same to that, to whatever question. If we ask, what can I do to help another being? What can I do to help myself or everyone, all of humanity? It's always going to be the same. Everything that we suffer from as a human being is a symptom of an incorrect idea about ourselves. This idea that we have that we are separate beings, this idea that we are different to and distinct from everything else. And although we are unique and individual expressions of the one being, we are by no means separate to that or to anything on the deepest level, the most fundamental level of our being. And so we can make a real difference through our own awakening. For each human being that begins to realize that they are not separate to each other, to everything, to anything. This is not a separate being waking up to the self. It is the self, the one being recognizing its oneness, its everywhereness. So it kind of wakes up out of this dream that it's having, that it's a separate being. And in that realization, it gets to keep everything it likes about being a separate being, and pretty much is able to discard everything it doesn't like. So fear and guilt and unworthiness and all of that eventually go with the idea of separation going. And when one human being comes to a clear realization that they are not separate from anything, they send out, whether they realize it or not, this kind of transmission, this kind of shockwave into the human consciousness that really lifts the sea of consciousness, the average level of human consciousness. There are human beings in which the self has clearly recognized itself, and there are those where it's clearly still happy or not uncomfortable enough feeling it's a separate being yet. But each being that wakes up and realizes the truth about itself, about themselves, where the self recognizes itself clearly, it makes it that much easier for the rest of humanity to do the same thing, those that want to, at least. And right now on this planet, we are in a massive global opportunity to make a huge difference. And it has never been more important than it is right now. We cannot solve any of the problems that happen in the world that are created on a level of separation by remaining as a separate being. We see plenty of examples of people who want to help, want to do good works, want to make a difference. But how effective can those actions be if they're still coming from a place of separation? And when that idea of separation has been completely transcended, then just the very presence of that being is going to begin to transform, first of all, their own life, their own situation. But then it's going to begin to spread outwards like ripples in a still pond to everybody that being encounters in some way. And most human beings, when they recognize what they are, they're not going to hold satsang. They're going to just go about their life in a quiet but extraordinary way, touching everyone's life that they meet. So this is the most important thing we can do, the first and foremost thing we need to get sorted out, we could say, our own separation transcended, our own fear and guilt and shame and unworthiness or whatever is coming for us, anger, and to come to the world and its challenges from the place having transcended all of that inside ourselves. It doesn't need to take a very long time. It doesn't need to be extraordinarily difficult either. So I thought this evening we could take a huge step towards that, and really I would like to lead a meditation in which we're going to practice unconditional love, just beginning to love ourselves unconditionally, because that is, once we have mastered unconditional love, we are much more able to, it's natural then we begin to love others unconditionally. And then it begins to spread outwards from us. And it's only a very small gap then to non-dual love, to love without another being, to love, to just love from that unconditional love. Unconditional love isn't better, or conditional love isn't worse than unconditional love. It's just gradually love, the self, the one being wants to come to a fuller, less limited expression of love. Whatever our ideas may be about unconditional love, it might serve us for the purpose of this meditation to just put those aside for this moment, and we're just going to be sitting and evoking this opened heart, this divine, compassionate love, which every human being is, and perhaps we're not taught how to allow. We usually only taught to love ourselves and others conditionally. And again, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But we can see from the situation at the moment that it's time to shift to a more expansive view of love. So all we need to do is master this within our own self, come to a place of unconditional love of ourself. What does that mean? It means that the word if disappears from our internal vocabulary. The word should or shouldn't begin to disappear. So I love myself if I get to this point in my awakening, or I love myself if I let go of this anger, or I love myself if I can, if I'm awakened. That's the only time I'm going to love myself. So putting conditions on our own lovability, our own capacity to accept love first and foremost from ourselves, because if we can come to love ourselves regardless of wherever we're at, then that immediately allows others to love us more, because we are not in a state of self-rejection. When I say how I am in this moment is not how I should be, then it's a self-rejection, a self-negation. It's saying the self isn't how it should be in this moment. And that's why it feels so bad. It feels so inauthentic. It feels so heavy, so constricted and tight. Firstly, as we come to love ourselves unconditionally, which isn't a difficult thing when we know how, other beings around us are going to be able to love us the way that they want to love us as well, without having to conform to our energy field. Our energy field is demanding so much of ourselves that we're not even going to be able to allow the love to come in that's trying to come from other beings, and even from our own heart inside, this divine, compassionate love, which begins to transform everything that it touches. And then as we become stable in our own ability to love ourselves no matter what, then we can also it's natural that we begin to love others unconditionally. Now, unconditional love, it doesn't mean that you even have to like that being or like their behavior or accept or condone anything. It doesn't mean that at all. Unconditional love doesn't mean I'm just going to hang around anyone because I love them. There's a respect within our own being, a vibrational resonance within our own being for other beings. It's totally possible to move away from someone who doesn't have your best interests at heart as an act of unconditional love for yourself and that being. It's totally possible also to move towards someone that does have your best interests at heart when you reach this place of unconditional love. So what would it be like right now in your experience, and we're going to do this in a moment, if you just began to practice loving yourself right as you are right now, without placing any conditions at all, without needing anything to change about yourself in this moment, instead of how most of us are, having this long list of things that we need to eliminate about ourselves and certain things we would like to get or bring forth before we feel we can love ourselves or even like ourselves or even accept ourselves. It has to, any change that we want to see in the world has to start with us. It has to be that we become the example of what is possible for a human being to experience and to live as. And that becomes, in practice, an extraordinarily simple thing. What happens to a human being when you stop putting conditions upon your own self? When you stop saying, I'm lovable when, or I'll be who I want to be when this thing happens, or when this sort of outer circumstances happens that I've been trying to get, or when this set of inner circumstances, when I'm only loving and compassionate and wise and peaceful, then I'll be lovable, and not now when I have judgmental thoughts, or I'm get angry sometimes, or get frustrated or disappointed with other beings, or whatever is going on. What happens when you put that aside for a while? Something wonderful begins to happen, and begin to discover that by accepting ourselves as we are in this moment begins to allow transformation to occur, and we begin to automatically transform into who we would like to be. Not because we are making that happen, just because that's what naturally occurs. The quality of our thought stream, the feel of our emotions, our day-to-day experience, our relationships, all begin to get an upgrade. What we've been trying so hard to have happen begins to emerge in this unconditional love of ourselves. It's one of life's ironies that the moment we stop pushing against what is begins to change into what we would like it to be anyway. It can never change in the next moment if we're pushing it against this moment. If we're saying, I am not how I'm supposed to be. So we can find this unconditionally loving place inside ourselves where we are accepting of wherever we are right now in this moment. It's just where we are right now in this moment. And yes, there are things we would like to have experience and be, but can we accept where we are in this moment fully? Do we have to place conditions upon ourself? And is that really how the self, how the divine, how that compassionate heart would see us? Is that really the deepest way we can perceive ourselves? Or is there not some place inside our heart already where we're already exactly who we want to be and evolving into something even better? So if you want to participate in this meditation, then you're more than welcome to just make yourself nice and comfy, and you can do this with your eyes open or closed. Doesn't matter, whatever position you're sitting in. We're just going to practice because unconditional love is something that we're not taught as human beings. We're taught, unfortunately, only how to love conditionally. Again, it's not wrong or bad, it's just conditional, and we're ready to move to unconditional. And just to join in if you want to, and just open, we're just going to focus on opening this deeper love from the heart center, just to begin to bathe our body and mind in this loving presence that is already 100% compassionate. So just as we're sitting here, we're just going to watch the body and mind. You can start by watching the breath if you want to, following the breath, just to allow yourself to calm down. Just observing the movement of the breath. And we're just going to gently step back and observe. Going to notice that we are here, our being is here in this moment, we're all together here. And in whichever way we are manifesting, we're just going to completely allow that to be. We're not going to place any conditions at all upon this moment, upon ourselves in this moment. So, if there's something inside that doesn't want to do this meditation, we can completely allow that resistance, that kind of inner turmoil. We give it permission to exist, that I am appearing as this resistance. I'm showing up this way in this moment. If our body is comfortable or if it's in pain, we're going to just allow that experience completely as much as we can. If some negative emotion or some positive state of peace arises, we're going to just completely allow whatever our experience is in this moment. What does it feel like when we're unconditionally loving ourselves? Even if some judgmental thoughts arise, they are completely given permission to exist. Doesn't matter whether those thoughts are about ourselves or others. Just checking out how it feels. What's that experience like when we're being completely and totally authentic in this moment? We're not saying how we should be at all, not trying to get rid of anything. We're not trying to reach towards anything either. We're just going to sit in this space together for 15 minutes or so. And whatever occurs in this meditation, we're going to apply this loving, compassionate heart to it. So if my attention is wandering all over the place, if I can't keep my attention on anything at all, if it's jumping to thoughts back to these words, if it's moving around, hearing noises outside, I'm going to completely let that be. As if everything that's happening in this moment, our body, our mind, our emotions, our environment, it's exactly as it's supposed to be right now. We are exactly who we are supposed to be in this moment. Have you ever given yourself 100% permission to be wherever you are in this moment? And what does that feel like when you do? What does that feel like when you allow yourself to be exactly as you are? This is the very basis of unconditional love. No conditions at all upon myself. Recognizing that your body begins to respond to that loving field. It may feel a little bit more relaxed, or it may be allowing some emotion to come to the surface. It may be giving you something to release, to feel. I am showing up as this tension in this moment. I am appearing as fear or peace or confusion or clarity. I am appearing as a deep meditation or a really noisy, disjointed meditation. It doesn't matter at all. We can simply allow ourselves unconditionally to be what we are. What do you look like and feel like from this unconditional place? To not know how you're going to be in the next moment, but to know it will be exactly as it's supposed to be. Just allowing yourself to love a little bit more, to accept a little bit more, or a lot more if you want to. Enjoying how it feels to recognize you are exactly where you're supposed to be in this moment. There isn't any set of inner or outer circumstances that make you more lovable than or more divine than any others. It doesn't matter whether our mind is talking or quiet, whether our emotions are positive or negative, whether our experience is of separation or union. It doesn't affect how divine we are in this moment. There is nothing we can change or be or do or have that's going to make you any more the presence of love already. And we're just evoking, allowing that divine, compassionate heart that is the core of every human being. It is the core of our being to come to the forefront. Simply by placing no conditions upon ourselves. Simply by allowing ourselves to be as we are in this moment. As if we intuitively know that nothing can go wrong. This is our meditation. How we are is how we are. Loving acceptance of ourself, however that is appearing. And in that loving acceptance of this moment, of ourself, of our body mind, we're giving permission for anything that wants to leave, anything that wants to come, to come. We don't have to manage that. There isn't anything we need to change about ourselves, simply to recognize clearer what we actually are, this divine presence of love, shaped as a human being already. Just loving acceptance. How I am is how I am already. Whatever happens in this moment, whether your mind is talking or quiet, whether you're feeling some negative or positive state, is simply how you're appearing in this moment. What does it feel like to love yourself unconditionally? Lining up with that divine presence that is you. This makes no demands of anyone or anything. Just resting in this presence of love, bathing our body and mind deeply in this love. Has a relaxing effect upon the body, a healing effect upon the body. Just this simple thing to love ourselves, accept ourselves as we are already. That I don't need anything to go or come for me to be perfect. Accepting my own perfection, however it's appearing in this moment. Being that example in this moment of how a human being can come to love, can come to life. And there is no goal to this meditation. There is no purpose for it except to allow this love to come forward. We can even accept our own thoughts, are negative, positive, whatever they're saying. They're 100% allowed to exist. What does it feel like when we're not pushing against ourselves? We're not in self-rejection. How does that feel? In this place of unconditional love, we can simply sit back metaphorically, allow our body and mind to change, to move, to grow. Recognizing the divine love that you are, appearing as this human being. And it can never be imperfect. It can never be wrong. It can never be other than it's supposed to be. How much can we open our heart in this moment? No thought or emotion or state defines us or limits us. Each time some thoughts arise, each time attention wanders, it's an opportunity to allow more love. As if each thought, each emotion is simply seeking love also, seeking acceptance from us. Allowing whatever changes to change, whatever stays the same to stay the same. Loving ourselves without condition, without limits, without boundaries. Right now, this moment is how it's supposed to be. Right now, you are exactly as you're supposed to be. Simply shifting from placing conditions upon ourselves to this unconditional acceptance, giving ourselves the love, the acceptance, the approval that we're searching for from others, filling ourselves up, nourishing ourselves completely, renewing, refreshing, releasing. Recognizing that this unconditional love of ourselves can happen wherever our body is, whatever our body is doing, whatever our mind is doing or not doing, whatever state we're feeling, positive or not so positive, whether we're seated like this in meditation or moving about through our day. It's totally within our grasp to completely and unconditionally love in this moment. And as we shift to this unconditional love, we will inspire those around us to do the same. So, whenever you're ready, you can begin to bring yourself back from this meditation, bringing our seated formal meditation to a close. And yet still remaining this open, loving, unconditional presence of love, that we're simply stepping into being that we're simply choosing to be that right now. Thank you. So just because our eyes are opening, just because we will be engaging in questions and conversation, doesn't mean we have to shift out of this place again. Even if conditionally loving or judgmental thoughts arise about ourselves, if we're hearing someone's question or someone's experience and we're judging ourselves as not being where that person is at, we can accept those judgmental thoughts completely without agreeing with them. We can allow them to just come and go completely. So I will open up for questions, or anybody that wants to share their experience. And just in case you're unfamiliar with Zoom, you can click on the participants section at the bottom and scroll down to there's an option to raise your hand there if you want to ask a question or share. I have a question that's been emailed in, which I'll read first. So I'll take up to another 4 or 5 questions as well as that. We'll start with this question first that's been emailed. Says, "Hi Helen, I'm wondering about when we sit down to meditate, what makes us ever get up? It seems to me that anything that would make us is somehow related to egoic desires and is a way of resisting what is. For example, I need to get up and eat, or to get rid of these unpleasant sensations in my body, or even to take care of other people. When these desires arise, why don't we just contemplate on them and they would eventually vanish and we would realize we don't actually need anything. We would just be in a state of peace till our body would die. Thanks." So I'm wondering about when we sit to meditate, what makes us get up? It seems to me that anything that would make us get up is somehow related to egoic desires. So that's something we can come to recognize about ourselves, that there isn't the body is kind of moving by itself, that there isn't really any egoic entity that is in charge. Just because I need to get up and eat, or I need to do something to take care of another being, there is a spontaneous movement of the body when that happens. There may also be a thought that arises at the same time which says, I need to do this thing, I need to eat, or that doesn't mean necessarily that thought is the cause of my body getting up to move. It's totally possible just to kind of watch that the thought arises at the same time as the movement of the body, and the body is capable of doing what it needs to do quite efficiently. It's not necessarily coming from an egoic place, that it can be just arising as a movement of this love that we've been discussing this evening. It can be, if I am radiating, emanating this presence of love, loving my own body mind first, that love is going to want to love other beings, and it's going to do that in various ways, taking care of this body, taking care of other bodies, doing what I need to do, is really that divine love in action. It really is that divine love expressing itself. There isn't a need to have a separate being driving, at the wheel of my life. It's quite possible for there to be no cause at all in that way for my actions, and to be just kind of sitting back, watching, metaphorically speaking, my body mind do what it does, and not to have any reason for that happening. It's just happening. It's purely spontaneous arising, coming out of the self, out of the love. And then that peace is there, like you said, but the body isn't going to just sort of wither away and disappear in that. The body will still spontaneously move by itself, look after itself, and whatever it needs to do. Anybody that's dependent on that body as well, it'll be taken care of. So really, it's not that we get up from meditation even in the deepest place inside ourselves. It's that meditation becomes continuous effortless thing eventually, and the body is kind of moving around, doing what it needs to do inside that meditation. The meditation is the space of my being, that unconditionally loving space in which my body functions more efficiently, actually, even without these egoic desires in the way. So just to really investigate, was it ever my egoic sense of self, my mind, whatever you want to call it, that was driving the whole thing? Because if it is, we're in trouble if we let that go, but if it never actually was, if we're just kind of watching this movie called My Life, then kind of sitting back and watching, the whole thing is going to get much more enjoyable, much more authentic, much more expansive, and the movie's going to get better and better. So I hope that answers that question. There are times when we don't feel we want to get up from meditation in the deepest, most beautiful state we can experience, but still eventually the body will move when it has to, naturally, spontaneously, by itself. It's quite intelligent in that way. So, okay, we'll go to Steve. First question.
Hello, Helen.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Not too bad. That meditation was lovely.
Good.
Just what the doctor ordered.
Fantastic.
It's some, I don't know if you said it, I heard it somewhere, that you can't go wrong really once you started this. But and I'm glad to hear that sometimes, because I was talking to someone today about maybe going on that graduate course, and it might just be a resistance, as we call it, or whatever. But I was saying, I'm not sure that it's for me. Now, the reason why I gave him was because when I get into these them so loftier teachings, I start reaching for stuff, and I start talking about things that are happening to me, or I believe are happening to me, and I seem to think I'm nearly getting there. And then gradually it sort of tapers off, and I start end up back in the bedrooms. Please God help me, and coming out of that, usually it's back to self-inquiry. Just, who am I? What am I? That simple place. So I've sort of half decided, why don't you stay there all the time? Just stay with that. So stop reaching for this and reaching for that. Because when I'm reaching it, I can't help but it must be ego that's reaching. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay then, probably. Well, you say there's no right or wrong way to go, is it finding out? I don't think it's resistance, I just think it's just, maybe that's not working for you. Let's try it in other ways, Steve.
Yeah, and it's an intuitive knowing of what feels best for you. And just to double check is if it's resistance, am I resisting this because, some egoic motivation? And if I find that what I'm doing is working, I'm feeling more peaceful day by day, a little bit more each day, a little bit less reactive to things day by day. And if that's occurring, then what I'm doing is working, it's successful. There might be no need to shift to anything else.
But eventually it will shift on its own, won't it? That's what I'm trying to get to. It will shift. And Nisargadatta and Maharaj, the both, I call them bookends. There's them two, and there's everybody else in between. But they just stay with it. It'll take you in. And that's what I'll come back to every time I've been down a slippery slope. I thought, well, what's the confusion, Steve? This is it. Keep simple, I'm just running by you. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I'm not. I want this. It's all. I'm pretty desperate. I'm getting to the age where I want to get here before I die. You know, I do want this. No, laughing is true.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll find eventually that the heart of any direct or advanced, in quotes, teaching is utter simplicity. Staying with one thing long enough to realize the fruit of it. To not be. And if we found that one thing that is our thing, self-inquiry, whatever it is, as you mentioned before, and there's a recognition, this is my question, this is it, this is my thing that's going to take me not into freedom, because I am that freedom, but to be able to consciously live like that.
Live like that.
Yeah. Then if that's clear inside you, then that should be honored, and just every now and again, just to double check, am I sticking with this because it's working or because I'm resisting something? And just that little insurance policy to make sure you might, do I need a course correct, or am I okay here? And it sounds like that's what you're doing. It sounds like it's, going right on track.
Right. Yeah. I just like to put things past you, you know what I mean? So,
yeah. Well, it's good to always check, isn't it? Because it's a very important thing. And we don't want to be heading in the wrong direction. We don't want to be wasting time.
Well, there's sometimes I don't want to put non-duality on. I don't want to listen to you. I don't want to do it. And I think, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just confusing me more and more. Yeah. I think, but it's so simple to do. I don't just leave that alone for a bit. Yeah. But sometimes then when I listen to you, I'm all right. I'm in your presence, and there's a big difference.
It's fine.
In a funny way, I sort of depend on you. You know what I mean? I've told you before, I don't like that really, but it's that if you've got a teacher, you've got to use it somehow. And sometimes I think if I share this, you'll think, where's he? What's he on? And I don't mean it. If that's how we think, that's how we think it. But eventually I have to share it.
I can't think that way about you. I can't think that way about anyone.
Bless you, my love.
And there's, if there's one thing I wish I could have done differently along the pathway, if I could go back and redo it, it would be to take some time off every now and again and have some fun. To just shut the books and stop the satsang one day a week or something and just watch something funny or go out and have a laugh or something. Just take some time off. Not be so completely. Of course, we're serious about this. Of course, we want it more than anything. But actually, sometimes we get in our own way with that, don't we? To some degree, kind of like, if you'd have seen me those years ago, I'd have had like at least 3 books in my handbag, and at least 5 satsang tabs open on my laptop, and I was just itching to get back home, to get back plugged in. I couldn't even enjoy where I was, couldn't enjoy my time off, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm getting better at that.
Yeah, that's good. So you're already more advanced than me. I could never figure that stuff out.
There you go.
Yeah.
If I get stuck, gives a ring, you'll be all right.
I'll let you know, don't worry.
I'll sort you out.
Yeah, thank you.
See you later.
Lovely. Thanks for sharing. Okay, we'll go to Bo.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good.
Good.
Good overall.
But
that meditation brought something out. I was able to get very relaxed, and kind of I was able to open up and have that space for everything that was coming up. Even when the sun started coming in through my window and I was starting to sweat, and that's always been something that's been mildly infuriating.
Did you kind of get nice and deep, and all of a sudden you start sizzling? You're thinking, oh, yeah.
Exactly. And I noticed that when we came out of meditation, I started to feel very emotional. Like there was the initial, like, okay, meditation's over. And then started to feel very kind of upset in some way. And then the question that I initially wanted to ask was about, I've been experiencing some intense anxiety the past couple of days. It's subsided, but it was related to that. And then thinking about like, okay, what exactly is the question that I want to ask? And then noticing that I started having like just this bubbling of anxiety because I couldn't properly think of a question, and I couldn't pay attention entirely to the question with Steve. Unfortunately, the moments where there was laughter helped kind of break me out of that.
You didn't miss anything anyway. It's just Steve giving me a little tune up and give me an update on my satsang. So we're all good.
Great. But I noticed that there was this fear coming up because I couldn't engage, or because I couldn't kind of move it aside, the anxiety to be engaged. And then I was thinking, like, when it gets to my question, I'm going to open my mouth and sound like a complete idiot because I don't know what I'm saying. It's initially I wanted to know maybe some tips to kind of, when you are experiencing a really intense emotion, how not to push it away, how to kind of create that space for it, because all emotion just wants to be known and kind of accepted in that sense, and then it will put it out. I recognize that. And that was a helpful thing to keep in mind during this meditation. But I don't know. So sometimes it feels like it's so overwhelming that it would limit my ability to participate or function in the world, which I think is what tripped me up this time.
It's very, very common. I remember feeling that myself, that this, as we begin to love and accept ourselves more, this unresolved stuff begins to come to the surface. It kind of goes, ooh, unconditional love, goody, let's run towards it, and it's not always at a convenient time. It's not always a time that suits us. And we can notice in that moment when something arises that it doesn't have to be one or the other. We don't have to either accept it or reject it. There's going to be both for some time. There's going to be probably some intense negative emotion arose for me now. There might still be something inside that says, no, I can't. I just can't, I can't, or I won't, some kind of feeling like that. And there's also this other part that just completely says yes to it, whatever it is. So if we can start off by lessening the resistance by not trying to get one or the other. It's going to be both, isn't it? It's going to be yes and a no when some intense emotion arises, some strong surging fear, or some deep sense of shame, or whatever's coming up. There's going to be a no, but we can say yes to that no as well, can't we? That as if the no, the pushing against it is arising simultaneously with the emotion. It is part of the emotion, as if you can't separate the no from the emotion. So to reject either one of them is going to be rejecting ourselves in this moment. So we can just start by allowing that no completely, if you can, in that moment. It's not the goal of the meditation to only get to yes. Can you see the difference? It's to say yes to the no as well. yes to the emotion, and yes to the no, I can't deal with this. And then something I found really helpful was just to investigate what the stories were around the emotion. And you mentioned that you touched upon, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said it's gonna be too much. It's gonna be overwhelming or something.
Yeah, a feeling of debilitation and not being able to kind of function in things that, help me, like participating in a satsang.
So we can question and investigate that. You know me, I'm always giving out questions. So is that true actually? Can this emotion, it seems like it's gonna overwhelm, it's gonna incapacitate, feels like it is, it's arising, but maybe that very idea that it's going to overwhelm me is in resistance to it, a subtle form of a subtle no, isn't it? It's a very subtle no that this is going to overwhelm me. This is not a good time for this emotion. I really want to focus on this thing, and this emotion is kind of getting in the way. It's a very subtle, clever, intellectual resistance that we do, isn't it? To kind of not be with this thing, this emotion. So you kind of, well, is that true actually, that it can overwhelm me? You know, and how much can I actually feel of it in this moment? And why do I have this idea that I've got to engage 100% of it in this moment? If I can only do 70%, then let me be 100% allowing that 70%. You know, there's just you don't have to be Superman, you know, just because some of these things are quite intense when they come up, aren't they? They're quite there's a fear inside us all, that we're going to come to an end at some point, you know, as a separate being. And as we begin to move away from that egoic perception of being a separate being, this fear is able to arise, to be looked at, to be felt, and then to realize it's not true, that we are not going to come to an end as a self. So and it may seem at random moments related to something completely different, but it's this real existential fear basically that comes up. And mind is trying to say, well, I'm scared of this or that thing, but really it's just the ego's in a state of fear, you know. And we get down to the core of that. There's just this fear in most of us that I've found in myself, and just questioning, can it really overwhelm me actually? And who says I have to do it all at once anyway? You know, just these stories around the emotion itself, just to begin to look at those, because otherwise we just tend to believe them, don't we? And then we experience being overwhelmed by this emotion, you know, this mad rush of that just floods the whole nervous system, and we kind of lose all rational capacity to think then in that moment. And they'll be right when I call on you and say, what's your question? And you're going, yeah. You know.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what was happening. My chest and like stomach were knotting up, but that's because I had just fed into the belief that, like, yeah, clearly this is going to ruin the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
could you come back later after Satsang when I finish doing what I want to do? You know, I'll pencil you in for later. But if you can see, it isn't about the emotion at all. It's about the story behind the emotion and how it's going to be based on what we've experienced in the past with the similar emotion. But that also was an experience of that belief too. Like, what's it like to just be with this emotion when I have no idea even that it's fear? There's a feeling inside, and my stomach may be knotted up, maybe my heart's pounding, and I'm feeling really hot, and before I would have said that's fear, but what actually is this thing? Let me just feel it out and see what it actually is. And it becomes, you're not resisting it then in that moment. Because if I call it fear, then we're not denying that we're feeling it, but if I call it fear, then I'm immediately going to go to my reference library about what I know about fear. how it was last time I felt it, how long it lasted for, how strong it was, how overwhelmed I got. All of that comes into play then, with this one 4-letter word, fear, or whatever emotion it is. So what's it like to just feel it out without really knowing anything about it at all? That's quite a useful place to go with it.
Because it's new every time anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, when we don't know anything about it at all, we don't know that it's good or bad or wanted or not wanted. We don't know. I mean, yes, conceptually we can label it fear, but it's a different experience every moment, as you just said, and it's actually inside as a capacity to even welcome it. We might not like it or want it to stay, but it's here, so we might as well, accept whatever we can. And the mind says, okay, if you're not accepting it 100%, you're doing it wrong. It's failure, 100% or bust. If it's 2% right now, it's 2%. Be authentically that. And then you won't get kind of caught in this experience. My thoughts about fear, I keep experiencing rather than the fear. And it's actually quite a simple thing then to go through the fear. It's a different thing when I'm not in resistance to it with any stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of feeling your way out into it. How can I resist this a little less? Why am I resisting this? What's it about? Can I be a little bit more with it than I am?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to actually defend myself from this thing? Has anyone ever actually died of feeling fear? Actually, really, have I ever, is it actually dangerous? We have this idea inside, though, that feeling emotion is a very bad thing somehow from our conditioning. These stories just get peeled away eventually. It's just how I'm appearing in this moment. I'm arising as fear. Can I be with that? Can I honor that to whatever degree? And then you won't lose that kind of, your logical brain won't get swamped with the emotional charge so much. It'll be clear in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You did very well verbalizing the question, considering.
Thank you.
Very good, very good. Good question. Okay, we'll go to Sharon.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Every time I have a deeper seeing, and this is inside, I know I can answer my own question, but I always feel better if you answer it, even though the ego gets in and interrupts everything you say. It's usually arguing with me about maybe I didn't hear you right, or just goes on and on. But I had such a deep seeing that that I am the mirror, that you're all a mirror in my mind, and the projector may be coming from the eyes, from the goggles that I'm wearing, and I do all this because I'm a visual person. So I had this, and then I go into this very deep self-hatred. Okay, and that could be at someone else or it could be at myself, but it really doesn't matter. And I'm starting to see more and more how it doesn't matter. I think I can actually thank the president, really, because he's helping me look at some things that really I'm believing about myself too. Like, we have one being. So, so like, where am I now? Well, I'm a little confused because, we are a program or a habit. The self that you are, where you are you still being programmed? Is this still an illusion? Because this is what I had learned in A Course in Miracles and other teachings, that even though you're awake, we're still in an illusion.
Okay, just explain to me what you mean by the illusion.
Well, a dream.
Okay. So if the dream, the illusion, comes from reality, comes from the self, if the self is kind of dreaming this idea of being a separate being, then it might take a little contemplating on this, a little pondering on this, but is it still a dream in the deepest place that we can see it? If something arises out of me and I am reality, everything that arises out of me must also be reality. So there is a point where you can't even really call it a dream anymore. You know, there's no difference between the dream and reality, ultimately. I don't know
And
if
I
that
know
kind of
that,
gets to where you were asking, or
right, it's what you said, it's what Adyashanti has said, it's what Raman had said, and yet A Course in Miracles does not say that. It says it's still illusion. So I got confused because you see, what the ego in me wants to do is it wants to find out everybody's answer because it doesn't want me to really just be.
what
So
if reality and illusion are synonyms? What if there is a place where illusion is just another way to describe reality? That there are two different ways of experiencing the same thing. I can experience my infinite nature. I can recognize my own immortality, my infinite capacity, or I can experience myself as a separate, limited being that was born and is going to, at some point, die. You know, that particular way of seeing myself. Which one of those is more real? You know, and of course, our ego would say, well, obviously, it's the first one, but eventually, even that distinction can be given up. That however I see myself, you know, with the next human being I come across, is just as much reality as experiencing itself whichever way it wants to in that moment. You know, that there is ego says dream or reality, and the self kind of says yes. You know, they're both eventually. The self is free to experience itself as a separate being, or to recognize its infinite nature. And how can I say which one of those is better? I can tell you which one feels nicer in the body, and a nicer experience. But if the self wants to experience itself as a separate being, as the next person I come across when I, you know, go out tomorrow, who am I to say that is less real than my experience? You know, so it's just kind of pointing to a place where I don't even want that division either of reality and illusion. I don't even want that division anymore. It can be gently let go of.
so it's like that's in reality check really when you bring us to every part of it with the assumptions, because what I was like, you like where you're at, you're not really experiencing the body other than that you go to the bathroom, eat and stuff like that. But do you feel your whole body, or is it just making its way down the chakras?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking with that last bit. Can you?
Well, I have like an idea, like the ego has an idea that when, you know, because I have openings in my head a lot, that I should be all open and then I'm awake, but yet I don't even know what I'm saying, Helen. What I'm really saying basically is that I get confused by this idea that if I think someone is enlightened or awakened, that they shouldn't do things. Like there were two teachers that I think a lot of that were actually on Facebook, like writing about Trump and negative stuff. And I wrote to them asking them, what did they think about the fact that no one has a choice who they pick? And one said we have free will, and the other one said there's all different stages of truth. And I went, you know what, I'll take this to Helen because I'm just finding that the ego is trying to to distract me from the now, the present, and because I think there's a strong belief I'm a failure, that I will fail this and I never get a chance to do this again.
Mm.
And if I fail this, okay, I might even have to come back and have a worse life than I've had. You know, it has all those stories. It's kind of
What's the evidence? What evidence can you give me that you're failing at this? I mean, let's get it out.
Why would I try to look at other awakened beings? I already know from guidance that everybody's following their own path. So why do I have to go snooping around like a little private eye? Oh, I see. You said that you transcended your ego and you don't like Trump. And so there I have it. You see, it's the investigator that wants, and all I'm doing is investigating myself, because these people are me.
Is that evidence of failure, though? Is that evidence of failure, or is that a healthy respect for the way truth is appearing in and as every being?
Oh.
You see,
So in other words,
not what we're doing, it's how we're coming to that action.
Well, now I'm just going to come really clean with this. I have a belief, if I don't end up like where Helen is, I failed.
And how do you know you're not there already? That's what I really want to ask you.
Listen, I watch you. You're in bliss right now. You always look like you're in bliss.
Is that the presence or absence of bliss? Because this is really important, and this is kind of everybody's question, isn't it? Really, okay. It's for everyone that's listening. Is the presence or absence of bliss or peace or love or joy, is that what makes you the self?
No, obviously not, because the self is the ego too. Yeah.
So,
wow, that made me feel better.
Can you fail? Can you fail at this?
No. And
can any set of circumstances, including a lot of bliss and peace, can that make you succeed? Can it make you any more yourself than you are in this moment?
No.
That's right what we were doing in the meditation, wasn't it? You know, right as I am right now in this minute, with my fears, my unworthiness, my, you know, whatever's my resistance to doing this. I don't want to do this satsang tonight. Really just, you know, that kind of feeling. Already that appearing as resistance, appearing as frustration, appearing as a sense of failure.
Right. Yeah.
You only fail if you've got to become the self. If you already are that, then there is just a progressive unfolding of that realization, isn't there?
I guess because the failure goes so deep, I thought that maybe you said that if just one fully awakens, like there's a definite stage of awakening. Yeah. And because I'm a failure, I'll never get to that last stage. But I think that
these things are these once you've had a seeing, and even sometimes before a seeing, but mind, ego is going to give you these things to say, help me with this. I feel, you know, ego says, I feel like I'm failing. And then you can take that as an egoic sense of self and agree. Or you can say, well, is it possible for me to fail? What am I trying to achieve anyway? How much can I fail if all I'm doing is really just kind of looking in the mirror, recognizing clearly what I've always been?
Right.
See, this is so important because it will help you deal with doubt, with fear, with unworthiness, you know, whatever it is that we feel is in the way of we are not becoming the self. We are only coming to see we've always been that. Always, 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 could never not be. And these things are coming up not because you're failing, but so that you can transmute them back into peace. I feel like I'm failing. Okay, well, is that possible for me to fail if I am that already? I don't feel like I'm good enough to wake up. I've been trying so hard, it's not working. Well, is it possible for you to achieve it and be worthy of it if you already are it right now in this moment? It's kind of an absolute insistence. Let me start from the realization, however deep that's gone, that I am that already. And then when mind brings me these things, I can embrace them and question them and then transcend them. You know, the presence or absence of any phenomenal state like fear or unworthiness or failure is happening because your realization is deepening, not in spite of it. It's happening to help you deepen further, to see clearer. This, I can't fail, actually. I can't fail, actually. I can't succeed either because I'm already it. You know, I can't be unenlightened or enlightened. I just am this already. That's the one thing that's absolute that you kind of measure everything else against. It's a different attitude, isn't it? A different way to come to
It
these
is.
things.
Yeah, it brings in something that I always felt insecure, but it felt right when I heard that there's no personal doer.
Mm-hmm.
And there was somebody once mentioned to me, well, Sharon, you don't live from there. And the person that mentioned that, I think a lot of. And so when she said that, I thought, oh, no, I don't live from there. But of course I live from there because there is no personal doer. We're all just one.
Exactly.
So I don't know why she said that, but maybe you remember, this is my dream. So I can never tell someone, well, I'm in my filter.
Mirroring some inner doubt that you weren't
Right.
kind of
That's
embracing, some inner,
yeah.
Reflecting. Sometimes it happens in inner voice, sometimes it comes from an outer voice. Same effect. We go, yeah, actually, I'm not doing that, or I am failing. Oh my gosh, whether it comes from an outer voice or inner voice, we can look at that. Is that, everything that mind brings to us is under this assumption that we're a separate being having to wake up and become the self. And if we just stay in what we have come to see is true, to whatever degree we're seeing that, I am already that. There is nothing wrong with admitting that. It's not arrogant. It's actually truthful, isn't it? It's arrogant to keep insisting I can fail, actually, in the end. It's the disrespect of truth, isn't it, in the end?
Yes, and that feels good. When you said love yourself today, you were talking about both the the self, the big self, the being, and also the little one too, right? Because the little one really, I never saw so clearly how much hatred that I've had for myself. Like I'm lying. The deeper I go, though, I'm seeing more of it, is what I'm going to tell you. Like, it's just dark.
If you, as we all do, believed at one point that you were this separate being that had to make your way back to God, like everyone, you would try really hard at that and fail over and over again, like I did. So because we keep seeming to fail, we start to hate ourselves, condemn ourselves. All of that happens again and again and again. But when we see that there's no way to succeed in that because we are already it, then that kind of failure can be seen as, well, of course I had to fail at trying to become what I already am, and that just, for me, that just washed away that unworthiness, as I saw it clearer, and that self-loathing that goes on. Nobody ever on the entire history of humanity has succeeded at becoming the self, ever. It's not possible. That they have come to clearly see they are already that and always have been, and everyone else also is. Right. You've got to fail at something that's impossible for you to do, haven't you?
Yeah, and that's where I can start to love both the character and the being. And this is good for me to listen to, because
it's good for all of us to kind of recognize everything we're trying to do from the egoic stance is not wrong. It's just not necessary either. Just a clearer and clearer seeing of what I already am, I've always been, and that washes away these. They come up then to be sort of brought into the light of our seeing, all of our doubts and fears. Of course we want to be this, but eventually we have to admit we are this eventually. And why not now? Now's a good time. It's always a good time.
Right. And Michael had mentioned something this morning about his story that I have had come up. that it shouldn't have happened, that what the abuse that I took through my life shouldn't have happened. And it didn't happen. And I got help last night. I was listening in on the Sangha. I wasn't in the room, but I was on my phone. And I think it was Andy that said, she said to, herself, well, hey, remember when you were dreaming? And that helped me a lot, because I was like, yeah, I can say that to Sharon. You remember that was a dream. You're really, you're really
Dreams
new
seem
enough.
extraordinarily real while we're having them. Absolutely real.
Yeah,
It's
so
only
this is all
afterwards.
helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
And
very
thank you,
welcome. I'm sure it's been helpful for everyone. So thank you, Sharon. Lovely. So we'll good place to leave it there for today. Thank you and namaste.